Hi everyone, I am here with a true story from Where Miracles Happen, True Stories of Heavenly Encounters. It's a guidepost book. And this story is called Heavenly Mission. But before every story, there's either a quote or a Bible verse or something. And this one is a little saying by James Hudson Taylor, a missionary. And it says, I used to ask God to help me. Then I asked if I might help him. And he's a missionary, so that's a great thing. He's helping, that's great. Okay, so let's begin the story, Heavenly Mission. Have you ever felt a quickening in your spirit, a sense that you're being led, even pushed? Sometimes that God's answering a prayer and using you to do it, if you're willing. Daniel Sheridan, a New York City firefighter, was insulting. He's insulting the crawl space. He was insulating the crawl space in the home he just purchased. It looked like he could finish the job tomorrow, if he could find another firefighter to swap work hours with him. Danny made a few phone calls and got John to work for him the next day. But late that night, another buddy phoned Danny and asked if John could substitute for him instead. Danny protested, but eventually agreed, grumbling all the way. He was still in a bad mood the next day when he reported for duty. We started as usual, checking tools, washing the floors. It was pretty uneventful, Danny says. About noon, an alarm sounded on a blaze in an old wooden tenement 3 blocks from their firehouse. Danny recognized the address and assumed, as the others did, that it was probably one of the many false alarms they received every week. When a false alarm is suspected, firefighters usually do not put on their heavier coats and helmets. But as Danny got dressed, he was conscious of an inner voice and distinct probe. Gear up, the voice told him. For some reason, Danny obeyed. Danny's truck company was assigned backup position called second due, so the men took their time about pulling out. Yet on the way, Danny again felt different, oddly focused on the call. As the siren sounded, his heart raced, as if he were being sent on a specific appointment. Was it God? God had always taken care of him, and Danny prayed often, but this intense concentration was unusual. By the time the truck pulled up, Danny had already jumped off. The tenement was burning, with flames shooting through the windows on the 3rd floor. The first due company was on the scene, but having trouble opening the hydrant, so Danny raced up the stairs, clogged with firefighters and fleeing tenants, to his assigned position as forcible entry man. I figured the others would catch up with me in a minute, he says, but because of the initial confusion, his buddies had inadvertently gone into the building next door. Although firefighters should always operate in pairs, Danny was completely alone on the 4th floor. Rather than put out the fire, a forcible entry man opens a building, starting on the floor above the blaze, and searches for victims. It's a very precarious position because smoke, heat, and flames go up. But when Danny got to the apartment and opened the steel fire door, he found something unusual. I was surprised at the lack of smoke, he says, considering the apartment below was fully involved. Carrying his tools, he crawled into the living room, keeping contact with the wall as a guide. No one was there. Then he worked his way toward the rear bedrooms. At this point, the fire door on the 3rd floor was opened, and heat and smoke came up the interior stairs and poured into the apartment. Danny inched his way down the hall to the first bedroom. Victims often become trapped in these buildings, but no one seemed to be here. By now, the apartment felt like the inside of a chimney. Perspiration ran down Danny's face and neck, stinging his eyes. The intense heat reminded him that flames were getting closer, racing up the inside walls. Where were his buddies? Belating, Danny realized that it was time to get out. Before the floor collapsed, strange though, he still had the sense of heightened awareness, of breath held, of something waiting to happen. Was God trying to reach him? And then he heard it. Just as he turned back, a tiny sound coming from the second bedroom, a cough, a baby's cough. No, could anyone so small have survived in this temperature? Danny moved toward the sound, feeling his way into the other bedroom, and saw the hazy outline of a crib in the corner. Inside was a newborn infant. The building residents let out a cheer when Danny staggered out the front door with a 10-day-old baby wrapped in his coat. "We were praying for you and for him," one woman said before she took little Joel to the hospital. The baby spent weeks in intensive care but recovered completely. A neighbor had been watching him but left in panic when the fire started. I tried to tell Joel's family in the hospital that I think God had big plans for him, because if things hadn't happened exactly as they did, he would not be here today, says Danny. I'm not sure they understood. But Danny understands why he had to work that day, why he suited up completely for an expected false alarm, why he seemed propelled onto the fourth floor and strangely reluctant to leave. There are still dark moments in his life, but then he remembers the day God sent him on a heavenly mission, and the shadows flee. Everything always happens for a reason. Good things. Remember, God only does good things. The devil, the bad things are from Satan. Good night, guys.